Welcome to the Shift podcast, where midlife, medicine, and mindset meet. We're breaking the silence around women's health and simplifying the path to feeling strong, clear, and better than ever. Hosted by me, Heidi Swapp, with insights from Dr. Vohn Watts and stories from real women, the Shift podcast is here to challenge the narrative, empower you with information, and create a new vision for your next chapter. Welcome back to the Shift podcast. I am Heidi Swapp, and I'm here with Chelsea Wood. She's my personal trainer. And with Dr. Vohn Watts. And he is a functional medicine doctor. And frankly, I've never been to a functional medicine doctor. And, you know, I think that we're going to start out here today and we're going to learn what that even means and how it's different, why it's different. And this guy, I mean, he's pretty much done everything. And I'm going to tell you right now, he's 49 because you're probably trying to guess how old is this guy because he looks way younger than he is. But that's probably just because, you know, you're just so healthy and strong and all those things because you just take such good care of yourself.
I think there's a genetic aspect of it too. There are some things that genetics do pull through 100%. So,
okay, well, so we'll tell just a little bit of backstory before we just dive in here. So Chelsea is... You know, I work out with Chelsea 2 times a week and I avoid her other than that at all costs, right? Because I don't want her to see like what I'm eating or what. No, I'm just teasing. Chelsea has become one of my dear friends, but I also kind of have that thing that she was talking about that people like want to confess their eating sins or, you know, whatever sins that they have. Anyway, so I started to talk to Chelsea about, I mean, I had heard about Dr. Watts. I knew about her journey. And we started to really talk about my desire, I guess, to be a little bit more vocal about my own health journey and about empowering women to just find solutions and to not settle with whatever they have, right? Which gets into this whole other project that we've been working on, and we'll talk about that later. But she says to me, like, we got to talk to Dr. Watts. And I'm like, I gotta meet this Dr. Watts because I had this image in my head about Dr. Watts, and it was this very like buttoned up, bow tied, old manish, because the way she talked about him was just this very, very scientific thing.
Nerds, to say it.
Okay.
So that was an old nerd.
Yeah, really. I mean,
young nerds.
But, and here's the thing, like Chelsea was so respectful every time she talked about him. And so I just was assuming that he was like super scientific-y. Anyway, so she's out of town. He comes into town and he's teaching at a conference. And I'm like, I'm going to go meet him. And I didn't really know what to expect. I didn't know what to look for. I didn't know where to find him. And I'm kind of texting with him and I'm like, do you want to like tell me where to go? And he's like, yeah, just text me when you get here. And I wanted to listen to his spiel because I kind of wanted to like see him in action. I wanted to,
vet him. You wanted to
vet him. Know.
She wanted to know.
Yeah. And I walk in and funny enough, it's like a really, a conference that I would probably not naturally go to because it was natural things, like a lot of crystals and, it was a healing. It was a healing.
Yeah, it was more than natural. It's a bit of a little woo-woo there.
It was pretty woo-woo.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty resistant I'm warming up to woo-woo in some areas. It was pretty well past my woo-woo boundary right now, but I'm open anyway. So I look around and there's this one booth that is like giant and excessive, especially for like all the other crystals that were there. And I decide I'm going to Google this guy. This is the first time it's occurred to me that I need to look him up, right? And I see a picture of him and he doesn't look 80. And he looks like a pretty young guy. And I'm thinking, well, how can I possibly trust somebody that's clearly younger than me? And I can, I see a picture on the internet of his family. He's a family man. Looks great. And I see this guy standing next to this really ginormous booth that has on a suit. And I'm thinking, okay, this is the guy. And he's talking to people. So I walk up and I start talking to the woman who's like manning the booth. He's talking to these other women, and I'm kind of like half-heartedly overhearing and then engaging in this conversation. And the woman who's working there recognizes me.
Like right away too.
You're Heidi,
of course.
You're Heidi Swapp, and I'm like, yeah. And then that always makes me nervous. Like, how do you know me? And so we have this kind of conversation, and I'm kind of texting. So I text Dr. Watts and I say, I'm here. And I can see him kind of looking around, and he's kind of like, what? Okay, well, come to my booth. This is the booth. And I'm standing there, and he's texting me, but I don't want to interrupt him. and finally, like, I'm right here. Because neither of us knew what to expect or anything. And it was kind of funny. And funny side note, I have to say, is that he's sitting there talking to these women about something that is very near and dear to my heart, and literally part of the entire culture of my family for the last, I can't even do the math, which is rugby sevens. And there's a very, very, we're
small community.
This is not New Zealand, right? And so there's not a lot of people who know rugby sevens the way that I know rugby sevens, from its, especially here in Utah. And he's talking about it like he owns the place. And I'm like, oh, buddy, you don't know who you're talking to. And so it was really funny because I found out in that short conversation that we had rugby in common, and all the rugby that his kids have done, that is, we knew a lot of the same people. And it was really like a fun thing to have in common because it's kind of unique. So I start telling him a little bit of my story, and it was one of those moments where I just knew that I was supposed to meet this person. And he said some things that from the very first second, I was like, this is the guy. And he says this thing. He says, the mom is a first responder. No. He had no way of knowing that this is in my core. And if any of you have followed me and I've talked a little bit about the fight, but being a first responder and not a first overreactor was this core piece of the fight. And as a mom, learning how to be a first responder emotionally for my kids meant something very specifically to me. But what he did in this very, very short conversation was expanded the reach of a mom first responder in a way that I had never thought about it. Because really, in the context of the fight and my journey with my son and his mental health and the suicide community, and starting to talk about that, this analogy of being a first responder really puts mom has to be in control before you can help anybody else. And being in control and being the safe person and being somebody who can calmly assist and not freak out, right? I have bracelets and hats that say, don't freak out. It is my entire personality because I'm such a freaker outer. It is my natural gift to freak out. And he started talking about this it's his whole philosophy and this book that he was writing, and immediately, I had Chelsea telling me about Dr. Watts for like a long time. And again, I have to take, Chelsea is just that first line of defense that tries to get at me, and I can pretty much ignore everything or most things. But then when other people start coming in, fighting it, then I have a harder time being resistant. And I understood immediately what she meant about Dr. Watts, and that is that he can explain things in ways that you can understand, that he sees things different, and that he believes in empowering people with their health. That is what I wanted. And that's not to say that I'm naturally excited about diving into difficult topics or whatever, but what I know is that I want to change the outcome. I want to be in control of the outcome. And I think that that's very much what you help provide people. So we started out by him telling me kind of a little bit of his background. And so before we get into the book and before we get into all of your accolades, I want you to kind of talk about where it all began with you in your family and in your very unique placement in your family.
Yeah. So I grew up in San Diego, one of 8 kids, and 4 boys, 4 girls in that order. And I was number 4. And so I kind of grew up like the youngest and also the middle. And I was, we grew up in a very devout Mormon family, and I was hell on wheels. I was definitely the wild child. Like I said, they would have considered me ADD back then, and I was just, have my own. The rules didn't. I didn't care about rules. For me, I'm just
superhuman.
I just I'm gonna do what I want to do kind of mentality, and I've always been that way when I was younger, and as I've and I was a little bit wild, I guess. Not crazy wild, but I just, for my mom, I'm sure I was wild, and she was a saint. But I got through high school. I actually wasn't a great student. My senior year, I missed 40 days of school. I spent most of them at the beach surfing.
That kind of sounds a lot like my own senior.
And I'm a doctor now. I barely made it through high school. It wasn't until I was married and I had our first kid, and I started to go back to school when I was in the Marine Corps. I went to college, and then it was getting straight A's. I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't even know this was a thing. I didn't know I could get straight A's. Oh, this is what happens when you actually are interested in what you're doing, and I just didn't have interest when I was younger in school. And
I think it's because you were starting to learn Morse code.
Well, that's saying I joined
Morse code is wild.
Well, that's a great thing. And you talked about the purpose of why you went into going on stage, right? Why you wanted to. You had a reason. You wanted to create discipline. And I kind of felt that for myself. I knew I was a little wild, and I needed that. And that was one of the reasons I joined the Marine Corps.
Did you choose to go to the Marine Corps?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, I did. I chose to go in the Marine Corps.
Someone in your family gone?
No. That, once again, like I said,
who wants to do that?
I was, well, right. Well, and this is what it was. I'm like, I had just come home from a mission from Venezuela, and I started my own business. I was, doing drywall and painting. And after about a year doing that, I'm like, oh my gosh, I do not want to do this when I'm 40. My back is going to be ruined. I'm just going to be, this is, all right, I ain't good money, but this is not something I want to do the rest of my life. And it's I need something that is going to help me get more discipline. And so I wanted to, eventually, I was looking at going to the FBI. I didn't have a degree. And so I started looking at all the things to go in the FBI, and it was, you need to be accounting degree or a law degree. And I'm like, screw that. I don't even plan on going to college. You know what I mean? This was my mentality at the time. So I'm like, I'll go in the Marine Corps. The other one was coming through the military and then, coming through that way. So I'm like, I'll go military intelligence. So joined the Marine Corps, went into, I was, like I said, I was Morse code and crypto. So code breaking.
So did you test in, and they said, well,
this is the shifty part of other recruiters. In my contract, it actually said linguist. I wanted to go in and learn another language. I spoke Spanish. I want to learn more languages. And I was scheduled to go in to be a linguist. And in boot camp, they pulled me out for special testing because, like I said, when I was younger, I always tested really high in the California standardized testing, but I was always a C student. And so apparently I must have scored really high on certain tests. So they pulled me out for special testing, only a few of us. And if I'd known differently, I probably would have bombed it so I could go in to be a linguist. But I scored.
Because you're like, Morse code isn't a language?
It's a language. I'm like, you suckers. So I scored really well on that. And it wasn't just a Morse code. It was a Morse code. And it was also the ability to break crypto. And so scored really high in that. So they reclassed me into that. I spent 8 months in Morse code school and 6 months in crypto, and then was stationed in Hawaii. Actually, I was stationed at the same base that Edward Snowden, the guy that went to China with all that disclosed what the NSA and the CIA were spying on American people.
Okay.
Worked the exact same mission. I was there about 4 or 5 years before him. And met my wife there, went back to school, actually got a degree in a business degree in is more like in computers and stuff. Came out of the Marine Corps, decided after, and so as a Marine, I worked for the NSA for 4 years. So I worked doing counterterrorism in Southeast Asia.
And so if you're keeping track, he's now 22. I mean, like how many years is elapsing? Well, it feels like you don't age. It feels like there's some kind of like a time warp for you.
When I tell my story, it's funny. People look at me like, how old are you? Like, here's how you can have this much experience. But I come out, my brother, I had an offer by the NSA to go work with the NSA. They were recruiting me, and my brother's like, hey, dude, come back here, come work for me. He owned a mortgage company at the time. He did mortgages. It was popping. This was like 2004. And so I did. I said, I just totally left everything I was planning on doing. After working for a 3-letter agency, I realized that I was their live mission during 9/11. And I realized that we're not always forthcoming. As a 3-letter agency, and realized I didn't want to continue on that life. So I went and did mortgages and then crashed in 2008. And that's
remember.
And went from, I here I am, in my late 20s, making 6 figures. And growing up the way I grew up, I mean, there were times where we didn't even know we were going to have Christmas. And so to make 6 figures was like the equivalent of winning the lottery to me. Like mentally,
Right.
Mentally, I was like, I'll never make it. Yeah, it's like unattainable. And went from doing that, doing well, have 4 kids, and then walked into work on a Monday morning to find out that the company I worked for closed their doors unannounced. Didn't tell anybody. That Monday morning, they said, we're done. And so you go from making a really good income to nothing overnight. And so when I was sitting in bed and I told my wife, I'm like, man, I was like, in chiropractic, it saved me because I broke my neck when I was in the Marines. So I had neck pain, obviously, for a number of years, and I got out of the Marine Corps, and I started going back to chiropractor. And within 3 months, my neck pain was gone.
Can I ask a question? Because you've just kind of glanced past this breaking neck situation. Did you dive into a pool?
No, it's not as glamorous as you think, but
so it's not a great. It's not something.
Well, it's not a horrible story, but it was like all of my injuries. I'll just be kidding. All of my injuries in the Marine Corps, broken hands, busted, stitches. Every single one of them. No, not my fault. Every single one of them were because in the military you have they actually have a lot of like sport leagues in there stuff. All of my injuries were in football.
So
and so
wow.
Yeah, so no, it wasn't. I didn't get blown off of a Humvee or something. So needless to say, the chiropractor was always a part of my life. My mom took me to chiropractic in the early 80s to help with my ADD, honestly. It really helped me. It helped reset my central nervous system, and I'd be good for a couple of weeks. And then, I think I said in the last episode, she'd take me in for my attitude adjustment.
So I'm super curious about that, too.
That's what she called it. It's like when he started getting proud, he's like, oh, it's time to go in for an attitude adjustment. And so I sit in bed when I told my wife, I'm like, didn't know what to do at this point. We're like, there's nothing. There's no sales jobs. All the sales jobs are gone. All people I knew in car business and any kind of sales it was a dark time. It was a rough time. So I'm like, I just need to do something different. And I don't want ever to put my future in the hands of somebody else that I could walk in and they say, you don't have a job. And so I'm like, I'm going to do something. I'm going to just work for myself again. I'm like, what can I do? And I was like, maybe I'll just go back and be a chiropractor. And I said that. And I was looking at it. I don't remember if I said it, if my wife said it. My wife might have said it, actually. We're looking at it man, chiropractic, that'd be kind of cool. And maybe I think it was actually her who said, well, maybe you should go back to chiropractic school. And I looked at her and I'm like, seriously? We got 4 kids right now, right? 4 kids and a dog. I'm like, really? She's like, yeah. And this was April of 2009. And we moved the family July of 2009. Like 3 months later, we're gone, Kansas City, going to chiropractic school and starting over. And so we moved from like this is a humbling experience. You move from your dream home, this huge home, into a 3-bedroom, 1.5 bath house and 1-car garage. I could fit the entire house in my garage that I moved from. But I'll tell you what, that was and you ask my wife, my kids, they were younger at the time, but me and my wife was like, this was the most connected we ever felt as a family. It was actually one of the best times when we had nothing. And so went back to school, came out of chiropractic school. I was really focusing on a lot, like on sports medicine and stuff. But early on, my brother also, who was in the mortgage industry, lost everything. And he was thinking about going to dental school. And he was pre-med here at BYU and was talked out of going to med school by his girlfriend's dad, who was a doctor, who said, I make great money. I got all the toys. He's like, I don't get to use them. I'm always working. And so he was looking to do something different. I said, hey, man, I'm going to chiropractic school. He's like, oh, that sounds cool. So we actually went back to school together.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And he was a year ahead of me because he had all the sciences. I didn't. And so he finished a year ahead of me. And when I was coming out, he was full-hearted into functional medicine. That's what he wanted to do to begin with. And so, he kind of influenced me in that aspect. And so I started looking at that, did a blood chemistry, mastering blood chemistry, and getting in there. And that's kind of fascinating. And so within a year out of chiropractic school, I started getting into functional medicine and had a few women come in that had Hashimoto's, had thyroid issues. And next thing you know, I had an entire practice of thyroid patients. And I did that, sold my practice. I was working in, my practice was in Warrensburg, Missouri. It's a little small town, about 60 miles outside. Drove an hour one way every day for years, and eventually sold that practice. My brother at that point was moving out of practice, and he started a supplement company. Had been open for a few years, and they called me and said, hey, you got a sales background and you're a doctor. Like, why don't you come here and be our BPSL? So I went over there, and I was there for about 4 years. In that 3-year period, 10x the company in 3 years, and then it sold off to private equity, which I stuck around for a year before I realized I didn't want to work for private equity. Left, was kind of semi-retired for a little bit. doTERRA came and recruited me. I came on to work for them as their vice president of nutritional education. And at the same time was actually starting my own supplement company, and stick around for about a year at doTERRA. And then I just realized it was time for me to go focus on my company and really put my efforts in growing my own company, and which is called Aegis Formulas, which is the company you came and saw, that supplement company.
And let me just spell it for you, because for somebody who struggles, it's a hard one. So it's you have to tell me where the name came from, because it doesn't sound like it looks, and so it's really difficult. AEGIS.
Yeah.
Aegis.
Yep. AEGIS. Actually, the company I worked for in the mortgage industry was called, most people probably don't even know this, they're going to hear this for the first time, it was called Aegis Wholesale. And I'm like, I just always liked that name, Aegis. And when I realized what it meant, is a Greek word for shield, or more specifically, even like Zeus's shield. So it's like a shield. So I'm like, hey, like we're trying to, be the shield for your health. So I'm like, it's going to be a weird name. Most people won't be able to pronounce it. I said, but once they do, you won't ever forget it.
Right. Yeah.
And so
that's cool to know that it means shield, though. Shield. That will help me.
Yep. So so we started that, and we've been July 1st made 1 year since we launched. We launched 2 years ago, but since we launched our first product, and it's going great. Yeah,
it's amazing stuff.
And so here, towards the end of last year, I was still with doTERRA a little bit, but I think it was like November-ish. I'm like, you know what? I really need to write this book. Because when I was in practice as a functional medicine doctor, the whole idea of functional medicine is root cause. So when somebody comes in and says, I have these symptoms, I'm not going, we'll take this supplement. I'm like, well, why do you have these symptoms? We need to run some blood work. Let's figure out what's causing the symptoms, and let's go up the cascade and fix what's causing the symptoms, as opposed to, just treating the symptoms. And I had a lot of success with that. with patients, but I always had so I always had 10 to 15% of patients that for whatever reason, they don't respond as well, even though they have very similar blood work, very similar symptoms. And I remember specifically this one time I was sitting in my office just like this before my office closed, and I had her file open. I was going through her blood work. This patient, it was her third blood panel. And by then, this is it. We're usually done. That's the last panel. Just, hey, we're good to go. And I'm looking at it, and she still has stuff that's not resolving. And I'm just like, what the heck is going on? She's just very similar to all my other patients. Why is she not responding? I remember closing the file and looking up and thinking, I'm overcomplicating this. I am so overcomplicating this. Truth, what I know is truth is simple. Truth is not complicated. So what do I know about the body? And so I started backtracking and I go, what do I know about the body? Well, I know the body is a self-healing organism when put in the right condition. I'm like, okay, so what does that mean? Okay, well, let's think of my patients. I give them supplement. We're working on something. He'll fix something. Give them a supplement. Where does it go? First place it goes is in the stomach, and boom, immediately the lights went on. I'm like, aha. Oh my gosh, half of my thyroid patients have acid reflux, which means they have low stomach acid, which means they're not going to break things down, food or other things down well before it gets into the intestines. So I'm like, I'm giving them supplements. Okay. Then it goes into the intestines, and what happens in the small intestines? That's where we absorb our nutrients. Well, all of these autoimmune patients have screwed up guts. So if you have screwed up gut, leaky gut, SIBO, dysbiosis, which is your microbiome is just basically microbiome issues and leaky gut. I started thinking, well, if they have that, they can't even absorb some of the stuff I'm giving them. And I started thinking, I'm like, I think I'm going to the root cause. I'm treating the root cause, but what I'm missing is getting the terrain ready first. And so I always use the farmer analogy. A farmer doesn't just go out and throw seeds in the field because they'd have a really unpredictable harvest. They go and get the field ready first before they plant seeds, right? Even as a functional medicine doctor, I'm going right to treating, which is the same as just throwing seeds. I'm like, I need to get the field ready first, which means I need to get the body, the terrain good. And what does that mean? Well, I know that going back to, in order for the body to be a self-healing, organism, you have to have optimal organ function. I mean, your organs need to function properly, your gut, your liver, your kidneys, going through those different things. And I said, well, I need to back up and focus on that first. Before I start treating, I need to do that. So I developed this concept called originally I called it foundational medicine. Since I've been out, and now I'm kind of working more with just the general public, I call it foundational wellness. Which is, I deem, the precursor to functional medicine. So before you start treating, you need to go in and you need to provide support to your organs, make sure your organs are functioning properly, and then you need a detox. Because the reason why, there's two reasons why your organs don't function. And actually, for me, in my belief and my concept is all disease, I'm going to preface that, for normal healthy people that then become diseased, the cause of all disease is one of three things. It's nutrient deficiency or toxic burden or a combination of both, which means either you're deficient, like we talked about the thyroid in a previous episode. If you don't have enough iodine, you can't make enough thyroid hormone, right? So that's a nutrient deficiency, which is now going to cause an organ dysfunction, which is then going to cascade down to other things, right? All these symptoms. And what's another thing? Well, I know that we talked about how the thyroid creates two hormones, T3 and T4. Well, 93% of that is T4, which is not in an active form. It has to be converted to T3. Well, 60% of that happens in the liver, 20% in the gut. So between those two organs, 80% of your thyroid conversion happens there. Now I'm like, oh, okay, what's going on in the liver? Well, a lot of the liver, we already know what's going on in the gut with these patients. What's going on in the liver? What's affecting it? Oh, liver flukes, parasites, heavy metal toxicity, environmental toxins like glyphosate, which is the active ingredient in Roundup, which is sprayed on all of our food. Mm-hmm. So we're consuming this stuff. Your body's trying to, naturally, your liver's job is to detox things out. But when you're exposed to so much, it can only keep up so much, and then you start accumulating, and then you get organ dysfunction. So the concept is you go in and ensure that there's no nutritional deficiencies, that they're getting all of the essential vitamins, minerals, and nutrients they need. and then detoxing them from any kind of things they've been exposed to. And you can even run tests on that. You can run tests. I run a total called total tox burden, which can test for all these things you look at, like atrazine, glyphosate, heavy metals, aluminum, mercury, arsenic, all these different things. And these things are lighting up like Christmas trees when I suddenly start running these kind of tests. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is what I was missing. And so it totally transformed. After selling my practice, when I went to Cellcore Biosciences, I introduced this concept, which was a little radical at the time, because root cause medicine is every patient you treat individualized approach, right? Whereas I'm coming in saying, this is kind of you do this with every patient. So I remember saying on stage talking, I'm like, before you guys get out the pitchforks and start throwing me off stage, give me 5 minutes. I said, and then I'd explain why it's more of a one size fits all. Every patient needs to go through this first before going into treatment. And what I found in my practice is when I switched to that concept, about 60% of my patients in that 4-month period of doing that, when we would retest, they never even moved into the functional medicine or the root cause treatment phase, because although their symptoms resolved, their blood panels were normal. All it was they were deficient, their lifestyle choices needed to be adjusted, and we needed to detox them. And 60%, that's all they needed. The other 40%, what it showed me that on average, 73% of their blood markers cleared up, which told me once again, a lot of these markers I was trying to treat originally were just red herrings. It was white noise. It had nothing to do with their actual root cause. And I was sitting here trying to treat all these things when by going through this process, now I'm left with the real root cause of what is going on. And then we'd move into a treatment phase. And when I brought that to Cellcore, we ended up launching the foundational protocol, which I think to this day is their top selling protocol. And they only sell to doctors. They sell direct to doctors. And I remember the very first conference I was at and explaining this concept, this doctor came up to me and said, I've been in practice for 25 years. And I don't know, I've always felt like I'm just missing something. He's like, that is such a simple, and it's not this concept of like, ooh, I'm this brilliant guy that came up with this. It was just bringing these simple ideas together and then in an order and in a process of doing it and when to do it. He's like, I'm going back into my practice on Monday and I am completely reforming how I treat patients. And to this day, a lot of them, thousands of doctors all over the country and all over the world are working up with this concept and having vastly greater, results with their patients because they're addressing a lot of really root cause is this toxicity. And we're so exposed to toxins, especially in the first world, more so than even the third world.
Yeah.
Because we have everything. We have all these endocrine disruptors by things we put on or spray on. We have all these toxins that are sprayed on our food that are legal somehow still. We have all these dyes and different ingredients that we know are carcinogenic, but somehow are approved through the FDA. It's wild, which is one of the things I was so excited about RFK coming into that spot was that I know that he shares a similar philosophy that I do when it comes to these toxins and how really those are what's causing these health issues down the road. And so, it's kind of where I came, and that's kind of where I'm at now.
Well, I think it makes so much sense. There's something that you said earlier. You said that when you start experiencing symptoms, you're already like deep down the rabbit hole of the disease. Right.
So your symptoms, and we often ignore symptoms, right? Pain's normal because we see on TV all these Advil and Tylenol, et cetera. Oh, pain's normal. Take an Advil.
Right.
And the reality is, no, that's a check engine light. And as a chiropractor, from a chiropractor perspective, working in the body, if you have pain, that's your body telling you that something is wrong here. Like, oh, I have hip pain. If you don't get that fixed, or you go and get an injection so you can't feel that pain, all it's doing is telling you that this joint or this joint specifically is not working properly. And if you continue, it's deteriorating. That's why you're feeling the pain. Now we go numb it with pills or injections so you can't feel it. So now it's just going to continue to deteriorate. It's your check engine light. It's putting black tape over your check engine light. So when you have symptoms, by the time you start showing symptoms, and I'm not, and this is more disease-wise, not necessarily physical, but especially with disease, by the time you start showing symptoms, you're about 40% into the disease process already.
Yeah, which is crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And so I guess it's pretty, I mean, it makes sense even to me who hates everything that is invasive. Like, I just want to ignore it until I physically can't. That's how I've kind of lived my life. Like, ignore it until you're literally bleeding out.
Right.
I think even the first time that we talked, you said there should be once a year this kind of check in, and that in the blood panel that there is stuff that will be caught way earlier than anything else. And so it is interesting. Yeah.
So if people talk about preventative health, and obviously diet and lifestyle is a big part of preventative health, but the best way to preventative health is to get an annual blood panel, like a comprehensive one, not ones your doctor runs that's like 1 page long. The panels I would run are like 8 pages long. So I'm really looking at all the different systems of the body. You can also check for, I usually recommend doing a toxin panel, like when I'm dealing with a patient. But once you've been cleared up, then it's just knowing, okay, run a comprehensive panel annually, see where things are at. And we should be detoxing once a year. Because you're going to be exposed to things, even if you think you're perfect. Oh, I eat only organic. Oh, great. Did you know that they've gone into Whole Foods and they've grabbed produce out of there and tested it and it tests positive for glyphosate? So, even when you think you're eating organic, you're still exposed to stuff. You have Bill Gates now who has this, I forget what it's called, peel or something like that, which is a thing they spray over produce to preserve it longer, which highly toxic.
Right.
Somehow now they've approved that on organic food because they got it classified as a fungicide. They've skirted around. So now you have to even be careful when you're buying organic food to see, does it have that peel label on from Bill Gates' company that has this coating over the vegetable or the fruit? So even when you think you're eating perfect, you can't. Not unless you're growing your own food and you're only eating your own food. Then okay, you're way better off. But how many people can do that?
But I think one of the encouraging things also that you brought up was that your body is made to be able to deal with the toxins that are coming in if it's functioning properly.
Correct.
Right. And so it's not. I think that when I kind of go down rabbit holes and it's like, oh, you've got all these toxins and you've got all these heavy metals, and it starts making me feel like, well, there's no hope. There's nothing I can do. I may as well just, I'm going down no matter what.
Right.
But I think that there was some encouragement when you shared that. And even like it started then making me question, like, okay, so I've had this pain for over a year, same pain, it won't go away. And I'm doing all the things. And so I'm just telling myself it's obviously I'm stressed. Obviously it's my phone. Obviously, And then I've started to wonder, like, okay, what is it telling me? And I go down this road of, well, I don't know. But that's what I want to change is, let's be proactive so that this isn't going to be something that then leads to something else. Or
there's other kind of toxins besides the internal toxins that we think about, emotional toxins, stress. You'll get tight traps. That is actual visceral somatic, where something internal will manifest externally. So you get these tight traps. You can have dysfunctional adrenals from that, right? But you also are exposed to radiation every day from your phone. I just actually saw something the other day. You go into your terms and conditions, or that you sign that nobody reads. It tells you right in there, based on your phone, your specific phone model, how far away you should hold your phone from your face because of the radiation exposure that you're getting. And that radiation exposure can cause cancer. Like, it's right in your terms and conditions. They don't say anything about it. But so you're being exposed to radiation as well. And so my point is not to like scare people about toxins. You're going to be exposed to toxins. Your liver's job is to expel toxins. The thing is we're exposed to probably more toxins in the first world than definitely in the second or third world. Living in Venezuela, believe me, they're not exposed to the same kind of stuff we are. They're not eating this ultra processed food diet. They're not everybody's running around with cell phones, So it's just a matter of your liver can only do so much, and then you got to help it. So that's why I always recommend, hey, do an annual detox, and you're usually you should stay ahead of the game.
Yeah, one of the things we talked about also that first time that we met is that you were kind of telling me about your upbringing, and you're kind of dropping in like military, and then I did this, and then I did this, and I'm thinking, okay, how did you ever even come back around to functional medicine? And I kind of asked that, like, why would it be that? And in the context of talking about like me being in this menopause situation, feeling like the information, like I thought I was doing a good job, and I thought that I was taking care of myself mostly, and maybe even when I was trying to get information and trying to get help, maybe that I wasn't getting the right information. You kind of start talking about your mom, and you talked about, I appreciate it a lot. And at the same time, I could tell that you had a lot of female patients because I could tell, that you had the ability to kind of say, as a mom, you're in depletion, and that depletion is real. And so I wanted you to kind of share what you shared with me that day when you talked about the kind of impact that your mom had on you as you watched her become depleted.
Yeah. So kind of go back a little bit further. My mom was always into natural type health stuff back in the 70s and 80s when it was weird. And now, like I said,
it's still kind of weird.
It's weird, but it's way more main. I mean, look at all the Whole Foods.
Right.
That people are, you know what I mean? Back then, that was weird. Oh, you go to the co-op? Like, that's a weird thing. Like, because a co-op back then was like, many cities didn't have one. It was a very regional thing. And she was into supplementation, and she suffered from, ironically, from thyroid issues. 8 kids. Can imagine what that did to her thyroid.
Where did she... Like, what was prompting her to go to a co-op? Like, was it her mom? Like, where was her woo-woo coming from?
No. That is one question. That's one question I don't know the answer to. I just know that for every reason, maybe it's because she has all these kids. And, back then, you didn't just run to the doctor for everything.
Right.
And so she, I don't know, just innately, she knew that medicine wasn't the route to heal. It was, natural. And so she just, she is like, if you're even asked to talk to my wife, my wife is a lot like how my mom is when it comes to, like, at home. I'm the second responder when it comes to healing my kids, believe it or not. You think, oh, the doctor will be, no, my wife is. Oh, something's going on. They get something in rugby, she has them on there and she's doing certain things on them, whether it be certain, she's Samoan, Polynesian, and they have this, lomi on them and using oils and different things. And she uses natural stuff, supplements when kids are sick. And my kids know you're sick, you start pounding vitamin C, vitamin D. It's just normal thing for them. But she, I don't know what prompted her exactly, but I just remember as a kid that was always, like in our house, the most sugary cereal you would ever see in our house, like it was a treat, Honey Nut Cheerios. Because anything else, there was nothing on it. No sugar. Like everything was like, she kept the sugar. Even when, the sugar was going like this.
She's like making her own bread and...
Oh no, that was a chore. One of the chores in our family, depending on the week it was making bread. So we had a wheat grinder, which was like, sounded like a, commercial machine going off in your kitchen.
Yeah.
And we grind your wheat. At 9 years old, I'm grinding wheat, the flour, and then making homemade bread that mom taught us how to make. And that was actually a chore. So depending on which kid's week it was, you were the one making bread.
Gosh, can you imagine? That's awesome.
Yeah. And we hated homemade bread. And honey, peanut butter and honey. And my kids love homemade bread.
Give us some Wonder Bread, please.
Because we never had that. So we always wanted, we didn't have it. And my kids love homemade bread. Matter of fact, they prefer it over regular bread.
Right.
And it's just ironic how things...
And honey, you guys did you have honeybees?
Oh, it was peanut butter. And no, but we'd always... Even living in San Diego was kind of weird because we didn't live out in the country. We lived in San Diego. We had a milkman that would come that about 20 minutes away from us. You could kind of get a little more out into some country. And he'd come in with these big jars of whole milk and we'd pour it in the thing. And every time you go in, you'd have to stir it because there'd be like this much cream on the top. This is kind of how we grew up. And so she was really my foundation when it came to natural health. Like she and all my family's like that. And my wife has kind of picked up the torch and with that in our family. And so, and so she struggled with stuff. She got to a point in life where, honestly, she struggled with her weight for a long time, a very long time. And with the weight that she was at, to be candid, she should have had a heart attack or a stroke in her 50s or 60s. And she passed at, I believe, the age of 76, 74, 76. 3 years ago, I think 76, about 3 years ago. And it was a point where it was during COVID. And there's another thing, she didn't get vaccinated. My dad, 86 years old now, he didn't get vaccinated and nobody got sick. Nobody was worried about any of that. We were just worried about getting her out of the rehabilitation center because she had to go in because she was having, she had, I think, like little mini strokes. She had or not mini strokes, she had some bleeding in her brain. And she was on blood thinners because she had blood clots. And so she came home and the doctor was basically like, if we take off the blood thinners, she'll bleed out in her brain. If we keep her, or if you take off the blood thinners, she won't bleed out in her brain, but she'll probably have blood clot and die. If we keep her on the blood thinners, she'll bleed out in her brain. So says she might have 6 months. They brought her home. She just wanted to be home. They brought her home. And showered. Because when you're in those facilities, they shower you like twice a week. She wanted to be home, wanted to be clean, and passed away like an hour after being home. Came home, showered, and passed away. And as a doctor, and what I do and what my brother does, you feel helpless. But if it was 20 years ago, if I'd gone into this when I was in my 20s, maybe I would have the knowledge back, But so I have a passion for helping women. Moms. And actually, this ring right here is actually her fingerprint.
Oh, it is.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
My wife it was actually a lapel for a suit, but at the time I wasn't really wearing suits much. I'm like, I'll never really use this much. So I took it to a friend who owns a jewelry store and he turned it into a ring for me. So.
You know what I love? There's a lot of things that I love about the story. What I love is that even though your mom is gone, her impact is driving your passion. And things that she did that you thought were annoying and the way that she brought you up is what sparked your life mission. And I think about my mom too. And my mom's been gone for about the same amount of time. And I know that she wouldn't want any of us to remember her in her worst time. But I think that it's what I learned and what I experienced in her worst time that is the most pivotal, key, important thing for me right now. It's changed the way I look at everything. And I see my mom as somebody who really tried hard to be as healthy as possible and to make her kids be healthy as possible. She was an amazing example of health to the degree that she knew. You know, I think all of our moms are pouring from an empty cup a lot of the time. And without a doubt, we're the last ones that we're worried about.
Oftentimes not oftentimes, I would say probably all the time, moms neglect themselves because they're just trying to take care of their family, you know, and I think it's a very common thing. I think most moms could probably relate to that.
There's a little bit of a nobility in neglecting yourself, even like that's your calling,
right?
To set yourself on the back burner. And of course you do. I mean, of course, when there's something going on with your child or with your spouse or someone that you love, anyone you love, you would do anything. But that's really what we're talking about. Will you? I've heard people say this, like, I would do anything to have this or
right.
that, or I would kill to have that, or I would die to have that. But the question is, would you live like that? You know, would you honor your kids? Would you honor the people that you're responsible for, that you care for, by taking your own health seriously? And it's crazy how hard that is to convince yourself that matters.
Well, think about it. Every mom wants to be the best mom, right? You want to be the best mom. You want to be able to be there for your kids. You want to, and this isn't to leave dads out, but I mean, it's just a very, very real thing. It's a different in families, fathers and mothers. Mothers are, you know, it's just different. We're wired differently. But you want to be there for your kids. You want to be able to help your kids and do everything you can to keep the family running. And oftentimes these moms are running on empty. They're running on a quarter tank. You know, it's like, how much better of a mom could you be, or how much more of that mom you want to be could you be if you were able to take care of yourself or do the things that could help you to thrive, to have the energy, to not, you know, have health issues, to just, I mean, honestly, energy is a lot of it, because any health issues can just drain your energy. And energy in itself is huge. Like the mom's cups are a few drops left, you know. It's like you got to fill those cups back up. And how you do that is you start taking care of yourself. You know, it's not just because you're taking care of yourself doesn't mean you're not taking care of your kids. But if you can take care of yourself and start to implement some of these simple truths, you know, like who controls, in most homes, who controls the food that's in the house? Mom. Who controls what's being consumed drink-wise in the house? Mom. Who's controlling what kids are getting when they're sick? Are they being taken to a doctor and having antibiotics shoved down their throats? Or is there other natural things like, you know, vitamin C, vitamin D, things that we know for hundreds of years that they've tried their best to hide it, but the research is there that show that it boosts your immune system. And, you know, these things that you can do, you know, to be that first responder that you want to be, you know. And that's really the whole purpose of my book, like I said, is to empower moms with knowledge, and not just knowledge, but to empower them with self-confidence that they can take care of a lot of these health issues that seem like major health issues just by controlling the types of things that the mom allows to bring into the home: food, drinks, medicines, vaccinations, all these different things. That's the one. So if you really want to impact your family's health. I mean, you're the boss. I tell my wife all the time, say, hey, I might be whatever at work, but here I'm just, I'm just an employee. I say, you're the CEO. You're the CEO at home. You're the CEO at home. And so, and it really, and she really is, like I said, even as a doctor, like when I don't get sick, I seldom get sick, but there's times when I can feel it. I'm working and suddenly I just like, oh my gosh, my stomach feels off. I just starting to feel off. And I'm like, babe, I'm just feeling off. She's like, lay down. And she'll like shirt off. And then she starts doing, actually she uses oils on me, and she uses certain oils, and she's working right in my back. And I'm not kidding. 30 minutes later, I'm off the bed and not feeling better, right back to work, and never get sick. Like it's like immediate. Like she's my first responder, and so you don't have to be a doctor. You don't have to be a health coach. You don't have to be a nutrition expert. You just have to know the simple truths that they really are simple. There's a lot of money in medicine. And so the more complicated we make it, the more unsure you are as a mom that you can handle it.
Sure.
And scared on top of it too. And it scares you too. Like, oh, well, I have to get him to a doctor because, we've been scared into medicine oftentimes. And so when you're empowered with knowledge, you're also empowered with self-confidence that you can do all these things. And, don't get me wrong, there's a time and a place for medicine. In my opinion is, your kid has a broken bone or stitches. So, that's where Western medicine thrives is in, emergency medicine. That's where they really thrive.
Yep.
Where they fail miserably is in health. They know nothing about health. They have like 1 credit hour of like 1 hour in 1 semester on nutrition. And medicine is not nutrition. Medicine is not health. Medicine is the black tape on the check engine light. That's all it is. And like I said, there's time and a place. But I would say the good majority of the time when you walk out of a family doc or a pediatrician, I mean, I can't remember how many times when people look at you like, wait, they gave you an antibiotic? But they said you had a viral infection. So clearly it's going to do nothing for it. Matter of fact, it's going to make it worse because now the good bacteria is one of the things that's helping to fight off the viral infection. And now you will kill that. And on top of it, now you're creating a whole other issue of microbiome health we talked about before. And sometimes you're being given medication that is counterproductive just because doctors feel like they have to write scripts because if you came in, that mom or dad expects a script when they walk out.
Right. So Chelsea, just as we kind of come to an end, I want you to just share like how your exposure to Dr. Watts, like from the beginning, how it really shaped, it shaped your whole perspective from the time that you first met him. Yeah. So maybe just talk to that a little bit as a patient. Not, you weren't really a patient, but kind of. Yeah. You were a self-imposed patient.
Yeah.
He didn't try to get rid of me now.
I think you were right. When I was diagnosed, I'm like, oh my gosh, like I will, at the time, I'll never step on stage again. Like this is something I'm going to have to deal with. I remember, I've got nieces that have, different autoimmunes, and I've watched them struggle. And so I thought, wow, like what's next? And watching my mom with Crohn's even. And so he just planted a seed of hope. And I think that's all it took was I clung to that little seed, and he kept it so simple.
And what was the seed?
Just that we heal your gut. Like it's just a title. Like this is just a label, and it doesn't have to control you. And so I just followed protocol, and it was very simple. That's what was so mind-blowing to me is like, it was just so simple. I never took the thyroid meds, and I still to this day don't. And so it just gave me confidence in a time of like total depletion, and so grateful that, I don't know, there's timing. I know that like we hear it all the time, but God has timing in all things. And he was exactly who I needed at that moment to give me hope. And it's changed my perspective, and it's changed a lot of my clients.
I was just going to say, tell me how often you're talking
to people about gut health? Oh, every day. Like it's just natural conversation. Like I'm not afraid to talk about poop. Like it comes up all the time. Like I'm asking my clients, like, are you pooping on a regular basis? And because of what I know now, it's totally shifting the way that I communicate with all of my clients too, and helping them to understand basic foundational wellness principles. Like it's
not complicated.
No.
And I think that's why it resonates, that the whole concept, because it's simple, but it makes sense. You're like, well, that makes sense, but can it be that simple? And like, actually, yeah, it is. You think God would make things so complex? I'm a firm believer that there's nothing you can go through from a health issue that there's not a natural remedy or natural plant or herb or something that, isn't available. I mean, medicine is only like 160 years old, something like 180 years old. So what have we been doing as humans for thousands of years? Not medicine, natural. And it's been that way for years and years. And we could do a whole episode on that. That'd be a red pill episode for sure.
Well, and I think that my goal here isn't to like create a conspiracy theory against everything that we do. I think that my whole goal is to create curiosity and to ask ourselves, like, is there another option? Am I waiting until I'm in crisis to seek out a last ditch effort? Am I living in pain? Am I suffering because I'm afraid? Am I unwilling to poke around and lean into some of these things? And I think that I am the least naturopathic person. I mean, I like lavender oil on my feet. Right? I think that helps. And I'm really into magnesium now, but like, I have been conditioned to just believe what a doctor says and to do what the doctor says. And I'm even like iffy on finishing my antibiotic, like going through the whole 10 days or whatever. Like I'm very much programmed to do what I'm told. And then when I'm let down, then I think it's my fault. Then I think I'm just not helpable. And I think I just want to challenge that. I think that there are solutions. And if we pay attention to them, I think that if we get curious about them, I think that if we open ourselves up to solutions, I saw a meme not too long ago that it's like a healthy lifestyle or a healthy life is like it's a booth, and it says like healthy life, and there's two windows that you can walk up to, and one of them is like says prescriptions above it, and the other one says lifestyle. And there's one person in the lifestyle line, and like 100 people in the prescription line,
right?
Because we do just want someone to tell us what to do,
right?
But we live in this information age where we have access to podcasts, we have access to studies, we have access to information like we never have. And I think there's a reason.
Well, that's, just real quick, I know we're going to be finishing up here. There's timing too. There's a reason why also is the timing for me to roll this book out was because regardless of where people sit on COVID or the COVID vaccine and all the horrible things that came out during that time, the one thing that it did do, the positive that came out of COVID was moms are no longer just trusting doctors. Now they're wanting to research. And so for me, it's like, you don't have to believe me. Don't believe me, actually. But the research is there. I'll provide the research. Now it's like moms are more curious now. I'm going to go research that myself. Great. Because guess what? The research is there. It's just if you go read it, you'll see it. You'll probably believe it even more so because you're reading. Oh, hey, look at this peer-reviewed study.
And that works for me.
Yeah.
Honestly.
No, but it should anyways. You should, even if you do believe somebody you're listening to, I like what they say, you should still want to go and read the research because the research is there. I can provide tons of research on vitamin C. I can provide tons of research on you name it. It's out there. It just, if you're not reading it, you don't know about it. And a lot of doctors are just so busy working, they're not reading the research. There's the latest research out just last year on a specific medication, and doctors are still prescribing it, even though the research came out peer-reviewed, even in the media, and saying emphatically that this does not work. It's been proven that this is bogus, and they're still prescribing it. Mm-hmm. So the research is there. Really, the whole idea of this is to pique your curiosity to go read the research, because don't believe me, don't believe anybody. Go believe yourself, go read the research because it's there, and you'll be surprised and probably very surprised at some of the research and how old some of the research is. And they've redone it, and they got new research and research from 50 years ago going, wait, this has been around for 50 years? Yeah, just you can't make money on it. You can't make money on supplements. You can't patent natural things, so you have to make them synthetic and call them a drug.
Right. Well, in the next episode, we're kind of going to dive into the nervous system, and we're going to kind of talk about the difference between the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous system, and we're going to kind of talk about how that plays into some of the things that get us.
Well, and give them that term because this is so they're ready for it. Talk about fight or flight.
We're going to talk about fight or flight, and it's something that I didn't know how significantly it was impacting me. And so I hope that you'll come back, and I hope that you'll share this with people that you know that may be in this same space, feeling maybe a little depleted, maybe a little sick and tired of being sick and tired, maybe wanting more. And we've kind of spent the last 3 episodes here. Like our first episode, we wanted to tell you why we were here. I wanted to introduce Chelsea and share her story and why she's been so impactful, and why I didn't trust her and why I do, and how we have evolved together. And I've wanted to kind of share what I saw and what I experienced when I met Dr. Watts, and how much it ruffled my feathers. And I guess maybe is waking a little woo-woo in me. Not a crazy woo-woo, just a little bit, because I want to be able to take care of myself, of my family. I want to be able to feel confidence. I want to be empowered. I want to take charge of my health and what it's going to look like for me 20, 30 years down the road. And my guess is that you do too. So thank you for being here, and we'll see you next time.
Dr. Vohn Watts, chiropractor and founder of Foundational Wellness, shares his insights on how the body functions as a whole system, along with the principles he uses to help people get on the path to better health. Please remember, the information shared on this podcast is for educational and informational purposes only. It is not intended to replace medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Every person is unique, and your health decisions should always be made in consultation with a qualified healthcare professional who knows your individual circumstances. Neither Dr. Watts nor this podcast is responsible for any actions you choose to take based on the discussions in these episodes.